In American high schools, the use of generative AI tools has grown rapidly. More than 84% of students report using it for schoolwork in College Board research published last fall. But the researchers also find many students, parents, and educators have concerns about the technology, and many schools did not report having a uniform policy for use yet. One dad is looking at a much bigger picture, becoming an advocate for using AI and robotics to improve education and school safety after his son survived a school shooting in Colorado.
Suddenly your mind goes to, I can't protect my children. And you kind of panic.
Mitch Mitchem is the CEO of Hive and a father of 4.
Then once you realize your kid is safe and everything's calming down, it feels like a violation. So in your mind, you're trying to wrap your head around what is reasonably happening in the world, what's going on with your kid, what's going on with all of it, and it overwhelms you. And so for me, as a person who not only in business but in life have felt like, okay, I can pretty much get control of different situations, and I can do things, and I can control my business and grow, all these things. Suddenly I didn't feel that. I felt out of control, like I couldn't control anything. And so my mindset started to quickly shift to problem solving. And what really shifted me is I had remembered about a week and a half or a week before that the school was, obviously my world is about, AI and humans. And the school was sending out notices about catching kids using AI and ChatGPT and we're going to determine if they're cheating. And it was just this heavy-handed communication. And I thought, wow, talk about your priorities being completely sideways. Meanwhile, this kid was in the building planning this and getting ready for it over the course of a couple of weeks and executed this horrible act. And I was just like, our priorities are out of whack as a culture.
Yeah, this isn't just, AI could help with security. It sounds like you're talking about really a paradigm shift in the way we think about school.
I think we've reached this moment in time where AI and all the top AI leaders say this all the time, but there is a real truth to the cost of knowledge dropping to basically zero now. And what that means is, in practice, I could say, hey, I could go learn everything there is to know about just about any topic right now as soon as I'm done here. Now, that doesn't mean I know how to apply any of that, which is really the wisdom side of it, applied knowledge over time. But the cost of knowledge is zero. So our kids just learning raw knowledge is not as valuable as it used to be. And so I immediately felt like, okay, first, AI needs to be in the school. We need to be educating our students on how to leverage this. Now, I've been talking about this for a little over a couple of years now. I was on a radio show last year talking with our governor in Colorado. And I told him the same thing. I said, Governor, we offered free support for any school in the state who wanted help with learning how to leverage AI. And 0 said they could do it right now. They weren't ready, and it would have cost them nothing. So that was the first problem. And then after this shooting, I thought, well, why are we not using AI to detect behavior? Why are we not using it? And I went so far in the article as to say, it wouldn't bother me if there were 2 or 3, robots roaming the halls analyzing children behavior. And I know some people would freak out about that surveillance, but we're under surveillance anyway. They already have CCTVs and video in the school. So why not just amplify that a little bit more if it keeps our kids safe?
Do you think part of the problem is that for the general public, at least, even though this technology has been years in the making, years in the development stages, and in some ways, on some level also being used, but it certainly felt behind the scenes until like ChatGPT exploded on the scene. So it was part of the problem that the general public doesn't have a good handle still on exactly what AI means, especially in a school setting, other than kids using a chatbot to write something for them instead of having to write it for themselves. I mean, is that kind of part of the root issue here? Because I know your company deals with integrating AI with human skills development. And it just feels like people don't think of the two things working together.
The reason that is, and even our CTO, who's also named Mitch, by the way, his name is Mitch Lane. So Mitch will, he and I will have these conversations all the time where we'll say, AI came without instructions. Now, we realized right away, and I also have a learning and development background. So I knew right away that there was a missing component here. And Part one was it was missing wisdom. Anybody who's used ChatGPT realizes, well, it can't infer wisdom. So it doesn't know beyond raw knowledge what to do with what it's giving you. And so we found that as we started teaching people how to use the models, what we were actually teaching was human skill. And once you know that, then you're able to apply those skills to using the models. And then all of a sudden, things start to change. If I know how to set a goal, if I know how to ask an AI model who, what, why, how, so I say, who is this for? And I go down that line. Now the AI has more of a context about what I'm trying to do. And it can help me, it can support me, it can amplify me.
So, what would the best possible scenario look like, in your opinion, for a typical school day?
I think it's a hybrid. I think part of it is teacher's instruction. I think that is about the how does this lesson apply to the actual human experience? I think that's important. Our lived experience is really critical. Second, we need AI in the school to help a student grow and learn on their own time. And there's a perfect example of this. A Harvard class a couple of years ago ran a study, 190 some students. Half the class could use AI as a coach with very clear instructions. Half the class could only access the professor. And at the end of the day, the class that could use the AI as a coach learned and retained at 2 to 3 times the rate. So students could use these AI models if taught properly how to use them as a coach. If a student is kinesthetic, for example, or more visual, and they visualize something, or they need to feel it to really understand a lesson, an AI can adapt to that. Like I said in my article, the AI is not going to roll its eyes because your son or daughter doesn't understand a lesson, and they don't understand it for the simple fact that they need to be moving to think, or they need to see it visually. And so a teacher can't manage that in a classroom of 20 or 30 students. It's too much diversity in how they process information. So if the AI can help with that.
The opinion piece you wrote for the Tennessean, though, comes at a time when parents are suing big tech platforms, arguing in some cases that chatbots are encouraging or even facilitating suicides.
Mhm.
Also, that social media is addictive on purpose. Are there inherent potential risks with exposing kids to more artificial intelligence? And I realize you're talking specifically about lesson plans and assistance, but you're also talking about, you know, sending an AI coach, if you will, home with school kids. And parents, a lot of them are working. They just don't have the time to police their child's every moment on a platform. So are there some inherent risks with this idea?
I think there are always risks to technology. I think this is the same argument people had in 1993, 4, and 5 when the internet came out. And by the way, some of that was true. The internet was risky. And I think this is where guardrails come in. And these technologies will have to continue to build guardrails in for kids, specifically, especially younger kids. But I also think there's this idea that we're going to let parents off the hook and say to them, "Oh no, it's only up to the technology." We did that with social media, and it got us into a really bad place. We believed as parents, I know I got caught in this trap too in 2010, 2008. I remember thinking, well, of course the social media platforms are going to protect our kids. No, of course they're not. They're going to get your kids addicted. The technology companies don't typically do a very good job of protecting your children. That's your job as a parent. This is where I push back on parents all the time. And they're like, well, I don't have time to learn. Well, when are you going to have time to help your kid then if you don't learn how to use these tools?
So both for the AI education piece and also for the, maybe AI related security improvements in schools or robotics even, are you talking about things that can happen at the local and state level, or does Congress need to get involved?
I think it's bipartisan, but at the federal level, things move very slowly and technology moves very fast. So I don't think it gets done at the federal level. I think the states are really doing a great job. Tennessee specifically has passed several bills. They've moved very quickly with really pushing AI into not only their government as a state, but into their educational system, helping teachers get the resources they need. I think, to me, that's kind of a model we need to be looking at. On the state level, though, now we have a bit of a challenge because of The president's trying to make it so that, he signed the executive order trying to stop states from creating their own rules. And I understand why he would try to do that, because the rules could be ad hoc and they could be really terrible. Certainly, we saw that in Colorado. Our Senate bill here basically wiped out AI and wiped out technology businesses, and lots left the state, including mine. So I think there's this, if the states were smart enough about it and bipartisan about it, they could solve these problems.
Anytime major changes are proposed, though, it certainly tends to rock the boat. So I'm just wondering, what do you say to anyone who argues that, wholesale change is not needed, or that there has to be another way?
Yeah, kids are going to do this no matter what. So we have to kind of look at inevitability. And politicians love to argue about, well, let's sit and think about it. Let's run a study. Let's pause and give this a couple years. I mean, if a company comes to me and says, well, we're going to talk about AI next year, I'll say to them flat out, I don't know where you're going to be next year. I'll be honest with you. I don't know that you're going to make it. I don't know that you're going to be able to catch up. And so if governments do that, if they stall, that's fine. Students are not going to stop. They're going to continue to use these tools. The problem is, with no guidance, they're going to use them improperly. I think at least school districts should say, well, we don't want our kids to be left behind. We're going to initiate at the school smart ways to implement these tools right now.
Mitch Mitchem, CEO of Hive, dad, advocate. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you.